Listo, ahora sí,
I'd
a
watch
verlo.
some TV. I'd crash on the couch and
Where did you slept in that moment?
on the couch in the living room, and um, he would be in his room, and everything was like totally normal. Um, but there were major warning signs that I didn't realize, and I guess my mom didn't realize. That, like, for example, I was dating a girl at the time, and now at this point I'm probably
14 and a half.
14 and a half, and I was dating a girl, and she my Brian was telling my mom, because my mom was very Christian and values and didn't want me
Pero eso que tenía que ver.
having sex before marriage or
Ah, ok.
doing any of this stuff with my girlfriend. So he latched onto that and was like, "Oh, you need to keep Drake away from his girlfriend because they're just trying to sneak off into the woods,
Okay.
and if you want Drake to not be doing those things, he needs to spend more time with me, and he shouldn't be around his
Ugh.
girlfriend." And so he
Qué
started
raro, huevón.
doing things like that to where he could get more time and more time with me. And then one morning, I woke up and I was on the couch, and one morning I woke up and I was being sexually assaulted. And at that moment, everything changed, and I was like, wow, my life's never going to be the same. And I don't know how. I'm so entrapped in this situation because he's so
Chale,
connected.
huevón.
He's so um, everybody loves this guy, and I don't know what to do now. And from there, I was basically trapped, and it became about a year of
Ay, no, huevón, qué horror.
just perpetual and abuse, and it it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And
Did you tell him something?
yeah, I mean, with this situation, it's, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again. I was
Horror de gente.
lapse in judgment, and
Ojalá se
I'm so
pudran en la
sorry, it'll never
cárcel,
happen
ojalá se
again.
mueran o algo.
Um,
Fuera de
and then
pedos. Ojalá.
it just continued, and I couldn't tell my mom, oh, no, I don't want to go over to Brian's house. It's because then
So why?
what's going on, what's happening? And I was so afraid of just everything. What are people going to think of me? What are people going to say? Am I going to be able to do what I love to do? Am I going to lose
Yes.
everything that I've worked on? Am I going to be demonized in this
Qué puto horror de
Hollywood
gente,
world?
qué asco.
Are people going to believe me? Just everything that you deal with. And at such a young age, I didn't know what
Sí,
to do.
normal.
And so that went on for quite a long time. And
Pobrecito.
I was just totally lost. That's when I think everything started to spiral out of control for me. I started. At first, before the abuse started, there were things that were happening at his house that shouldn't have happened. Like, I was able to drink because he would have parties, and I could drink I could drink at his house, and I could get drunk, and I'm spending the night here anyway, and my mom's never gonna know. And so, but nothing's happening. I feel safe. I just feel like I'm at my friend's house that I could do stuff that I want to do. That
He's
every kid
preparing
wants
me for life.
yeah, whatever.
Qué asco.
But it started to become where I think he was using, alcohol and being intoxicated to really, like, for lack of better words, loosen me up into being out of my mind, and being able to take advantage of those situations. And
Did he use another drug more than alcohol?
there were, I mean, I can't confirm nor deny what went on, but there was a lot of, it got really dark. It got really, really dark.
Qué asco, man.
So I was living through that, with no escape or anything. And we had
Pobre
gotten
Draco, man.
the call that Drake and Josh was getting picked up. And there was a role. They were going to recast the dad on the show. And so there was an open role for a guy about his age, and he was like, "Oh, you got to convince the network. Like, that would be a great role for me. Like, I would."
No way.
Yeah, like I could play the dad on the show, and that's a great role. And you need to convince the network that I could be. And in my mind, I'm like, "Bro, you're not coming anywhere near. Like, that's my show now. Now I can say what happens. Like, it's Drake and Josh. Like, that's my show. Like, I can tell the network you're not coming anywhere near that show. But how do I tell the network, hey, I don't want this person to be a part of the show because blah, blah, blah. And I don't know why or how. I don't remember the exact conversation. I mean, I remember the exact conversation. I don't know the catalyst or why. I just finally exploded. And there were moments prior where out of nowhere, my mom would say, "Oh, Brian's coming to pick you up." I'm like, "I don't have an audition. I don't want to go there. Why is he coming here?" And she's like,
What's going on?
"What's that?" And my girlfriend at the time, just so many red flags were going up. He would just show up to my girlfriend's house. I would say, "Oh, I don't want to go hang out," but then he would just show up at the house because we were doing a lot of extracurricular activities. We'd go to Disneyland with him and his friends, and we were doing all these other things and going to dinners and all of this, parties and everything. And my girlfriend was going, why is this person so attached to you outside of work, and what is going on?
Pero
And
¿cuál
my
ciclo? ¿De
mom
qué hablas,
didn't like
Daniel?
it at
No
all.
entiendo esa parte.
And there was one time when I was supposed to go to Disneyland with him, and I had started spending a lot of time at my girlfriend's house, and I just felt safe there. Like, that was
Of course.
somewhere I felt safe. Her mom was very, very protective over me. We had a really, really great relationship, and my girlfriend and I were just best friends. I mean, I'm going to start crying.
Ay, joder.
Oh, wow.
No
We
llores.
were
yo-
best friends, like just inseparable, she and I. And so I felt really, really comfortable. Thank you. Thank you.
No.
So I started feeling...
Thank you about confidence.
Yeah.
Thank you about all this. I know that it's really, really tough to talk about this. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Because I know that there's so many people watching outside, parents and kids and everybody saying this still happen.
Yeah.
Kids are afraid about that, but sorry about the interruption.
But no, and so
Bim, bim, bim.
we loved the same music, we loved the same movie, we just were so connected. And I think at that age, that's your whole world.
Yes.
And so
And do you think she felt what was going on?
100%. We knew each other. We were so close and connected, she and I, that
Ay, huevón, que pueden tener a alguien así.
she 100% knew. And I was so close with her mom too that they knew something was going on. Something was up. And also seeing changes in my behavior and my mood swings and anger issues and
Me acusó.
and there was just something going on.
Según
Well,
yo,
there was
no.
one night when
No procedió
I
nada.
was
Según yo,
supposed to go
¿verdad?
to
No sé.
Disneyland, and I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay at my girlfriend's house. I wanted to be with her. I wanted to watch movies. I wanted to
keep safe.
I just wanted to be and also I wanted to be with her, And wow, it's really hard to talk about her. So we
Oh, sí, se declaró culpable.
my phone saying, "Hey, I'm gonna come pick you up at your girlfriend's house, and we're gonna go to Disneyland." And I just ignore,
Ah, sí, es cierto.
and he started calling. I mean, I actually talked recently with her.
And he never invited her?
No. The very few times I talked to her recently, and she reminded me of very few times that we did something all together, like going to a dinner party at a friend's house, or
Mm,
I can't remember what the other situations were, but she mentioned to me, she's like, "Do you remember that time when we went with him to this place and this happened, and we went to and and I was like, wow, there's a lot that I've blocked out that I don't remember." And she was bringing up all of these times, and she goes, "Do you remember that time you called my house 100
pero
times?"
dice que no.
And
Bueno,
and
no sé qué
actually, I
tanto
forgot
sea
about
verdad
this,
del caso,
but she had gotten so
pero lo que él
angry
dice es que sí le envió
that
mensajes, pero
she
que
went and
nunca
she
abusó de
ripped the
ella.
phone. Oh, I didn't get there yet. So he's calling my
Que
phone.
tampoco
I'm ignoring it.
hubo,
Well, he had
o
my
sea, que solo fueron
girlfriend's
mensajes, no
home
que
phone
fueron
number.
ni fotos
So
ni
he started
nada
calling the
de
home
lo demás.
over and over and over, and she went and ripped the phone out of the
Pero
wall.
no sé qué dice el caso en realidad.
And it was at that point that she was like, "What is going on? Like, you need to tell me what's happening.
Pero
What's
él
going on? What's
dice
happening?
que
What's going
recién
on?"
había nacido su bebé
And
y que por eso lo hizo.
her mom came out and said, "Hey,
Porque
Drake,
si se
can I talk to you
declaraba
in the kitchen for a
culpable,
second?"
la condena iba a ser menor y iba a pasar
Kitchen.
más tiempo con su
She
hijo.
shuts the door. She goes,
Pero no
"So what's
sabemos
going on?"
realmente qué.
I'm like, "What?" She
Pero-
goes,
This is not a normal.
"This is not normal. You're my daughter's."
A ver, ¿cómo? Esta parte me
Still
perdí.
happen.
Yeah. Music, we love this at that age. She's in my anger issues and my mood swings and on. Well, there was one night when I was supposed to go to Disneyland, and I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay at my girlfriend's house. I wanted to be yeah, and also I just really hard to talk about her. He started calling my phone saying, "Hey, I'm gonna come pick you up at your girlfriend's house, and we're gonna go to Disneyland." And I just ignored, and he started calling.
Ok.
I mean, I actually talked recently with her.
And he never invited her?
No. The very few times I talked to her recently, and she reminded me of very few times that we did something all together, like going to a dinner party at a friend's house, or I can't remember what the other situations were, but she mentioned to me, she's like, "Do you remember that time when we went with him to this place and this happened, and we went to and and I was like, wow, there's a lot that I've blocked out that I don't remember." And she was bringing up all of these times, and she goes, "Do you remember that time he called my house 100 times?" And I ripped, and actually I forgot about this, but she had gotten so angry that she went and she ripped the phone. Oh, I didn't get there yet. So he's calling my phone. I'm ignoring it. Well, he had my girlfriend's home phone number, so he started calling the home over and over and over, and she went and ripped the phone out of the wall. And it was at that point that she was like, "What is going on? Like, you need to tell me what's happening, what's going on, what's happening, what's going on." And her mom came out and said, "Hey, Drake, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a second?" I was like, "Sure." So we go in the kitchen. She shuts the door, and she goes, "So what's going on?" I'm like, "What?" She goes,
Ahí está.
This is not
Va.
normal.
"This is not normal. You're my daughter's young boyfriend. Like, this isn't normal. What is there something, you want to talk about? Is there something?" And at that time I was so scared, and I was like, no, there's nothing going on. She's like, "Well, my girlfriend had her dad had gotten brain cancer and tragically passed away
Suavecito.
not too many years prior to this." And so she had a therapist that she was going to. So she's like, "We're going to take you to your to her therapist tomorrow, and just sit down with him. And if you feel like saying anything, then but we're gonna go see the doctor tomorrow. So I sat down with him and was like, no, it is getting, but I felt I felt a little bit like, oh, this could be my out. Like, this could be the way that I get away from him. I can at least say things are getting weird. Things are getting strange. So I told him that. I said, everything was normal, but now it's getting a little strange. But I didn't say anything had happened. And then finally I had enough, and I blew up on my mom on the phone and told her everything that was happening. I don't remember if I was at my girlfriend. I think I was at my brother's. I can't remember. But and then I had told my girlfriend, and we were at her house, and I told my girlfriend, and we were both just bawling and tears, and we ended up just laying on the couch all night and holding each other and crying, and and she was, I mean, to this day, she is, let's just say he wouldn't want to meet her in a dark alley. I mean, she was very protective of me, and it did not go over well with her. And so we, and then she would sit in, I might have told her before I told my mom. And because I remember, she reminded me of one time when we were at my house and we were on my bed and we were talking, and she's like, you have to say something. You have, like, you can't, this person cannot be, excuse me, out there doing these types of things.
In that moment, you were still doing Drake and Josh?
We hadn't started this.
Next season.
We hadn't picked it. We were picked up, but we hadn't started filming yet. And she's like, you have to say something. He's going to end up working on the show. You have to, because whether it was as the dad on the show, he would have been dialogue coach. And so she said, you have to say something. Something has to be done. We have to do something, and you and I'm like, I can't. I don't want my name out there. I don't want this. I've got all this coming up. And she's like, no, you have to do it so you can be a John Doe. So your name won't be out there, And so finally I blew up. I told my mom, and next thing I knew, there were detectives at the house. And
what happened when you talked to your mom?
She got off the phone with me and called the police.
Immediately?
Immediately. She got moved around and told where to go, and I ended up with the police.
Did your father know at the same moment?
No, I couldn't let my dad know. I was so, I couldn't let my dad know. My dad didn't know until later.
Okay.
And so the police came, and I was being interviewed by the police, and I had to tell them all the grisly details and of everything that happened, and how it happened, and where it happened, and when it happened, and to these two strangers and my mom sitting at a dinner table. And then fast forward, I'm saying a lot, but fast forward, I ended up having to get on a phone that was connected to a tape recorder and get him to admit everything that he had done. And when that happened, when
it was like a normal call.
Yeah, I had to pretend that it was a normal call and ask him why he had done what he did, and that now I'm very confused, and I'm dealing with all of these emotions and this stuff, and I don't know how to work through it, and I don't know why, and why did he do this, and I don't understand my emotions and my thoughts and this and that. And he just opened up like a book. Kept asking, are we being recorded? Are we being recorded? And no. I'm dealing with a lot right now, and I just need to know, what's this, what's that? Why did you do this? Why did you do this?
Estamos afrontando ya la parte fea de...
We got a tape of him admitting what happened, and after that, he was charged and arrested, and then the news got out everywhere. Well, not really, because that story was very suppressed. It's very interesting of why. And I later learned, just recently, of why that might have been the case, because there were 41 or some odd letters written to the judge from people in Hollywood, directors, writers, actors, producers,
Ya te terminaron de hacer lo de tu...
in support
lo del dentista
of
casi.
him.
No way.
Saying he must have been pressured into it. That I could only imagine, one of the letters said, I could only imagine he was pressured
¿Qué te hicieron?
beyond belief until he finally caved in. And all of the letters were saying that I was the one at fault, that I was the one that was coaxing him into doing what he did.
Qué
That I
pedo,
was the
weón.
one, that he had to be under so much pressure and a victim of jailbait, and that it was my fault, and
Wow.
I was asking for it, and all of this, and which I didn't know these letters existed until this documentary. But it really sheds a light on how the media suppressed his story.
But there's so many interests.
Because there were no. I mean, that's a huge story.
Oof.
You have something like that happen at a children's network on such a grand scale. I mean, that's a headline for the New York Times, but it disappeared.
Yes.
It disappeared.
What a shame.
But I have this,
Como en
call it
aquí.
a conspiracy or call it whatever, but it's in black and white. I'm looking
Yes,
at it there.
yes.
There's no conspiracy anymore.
Yes.
I mean, this is what it is. And every mistake and misstep that I made was amplified to such a degree. Even with my things that I got into later in life, misinformation, misreporting, blatant lies that you just look on Google and you can find the real story, but nobody does that. We were talking about that earlier. They just take somebody tweeted something, oh, that's a fact. Oh, somebody put a TikTok out, that's a fact. And so my name was being dragged through the mud my entire life after this. And I think that contributed to, alcoholism, drugs, whatever I could do to escape, relationships, ended up hurting people along the way and burning bridges.
Dios, lo rompiste aquí.
And all of a sudden I would see my name in the papers and it would be saying this about me, and that, look at what happens to these young stars. They always end up in the gutter and they always end up doing all these horrible things. And I'm just like, every day having to read these things. So then that would contribute to me just wanting to escape. And then I would get another DUI, or I'd be seen coming out of a bar or a club and be just out of my mind. And every single little mistake that I made was just blasted everywhere. But this guy ended up working again.
No.
On children's television.
No way.
Yeah. On the Disney Channel.
No.
He ended up going and working on the Disney Channel. And what I've learned...
Did they ask him something about all these issues and all this problem?
They didn't have to ask. They knew. They knew. And
does him still working there?
What I learned now is some of the people who I ended up working with on Drake and Josh, thinking they were my friends,
they know about it.
Wrote letters. Were some of the people who wrote letters supporting him and against me. And those are the same people who were working on the shows that he eventually got hired on again. Work around kids and be around kids. And so my whole life I had, been
La verdad.
all of this
toda la industria, toda industria de televisión y cine, toda.
All of these horrible things happening. And he was hanging out on set,
Yo creo que sí,
going to
toda.
parties, being around Hollywood like nothing happened. And I remember one time I saw him at a restaurant and he was at the table with like 10 or 12 actors, all male actors between the ages of 14 and 16. And I walked in and saw him and saw that he was just right back to what he was doing, and turned around and left. And he was sentenced to 16 months in prison.
Just 16 months?
Just 16 months, and I think only of which He served maybe 4. And when he got out, he was a registered offender, a registered sex offender for crimes against a child. And he went right back to work on the Disney Channel, on Fox, on all of these companies just hired him again.
Is he still working?
Well, hopefully after this documentary, no.
Do you?
But if you check his IMDb, I mean, he's got a plethora. I mean, he recently worked on a movie where he played a teacher in a school with all young actors.
Do you were afraid of him after all this?
Terrified. I mean, there was such a...
Because watching him in a restaurant and face to face, I guess it could be really, really tough.
Yeah, and I knew how connected he was. I didn't know until seeing these letters how connected and how people, I mean, they wrote love letters about him. He doesn't deserve jail. It was not his fault and all this. And from, I mean, huge producers, huge actors. And a tragic thing is when I went to court for the sentencing, I had my mom, my friend, my brother, and my stepdad, and myself. So it was 5 of us on my side of the courtroom.
And how many of him?
There wasn't an empty seat. Whoa. It was completely full of actors, people I grew up with watching, people who I considered my friends who knew me through him and in the business.
Pues mira, Cas, no sé, yo ahorita me acabo de ver.
Young actors, a lot of minor actors, a lot of major, older actors.
Tengamos en cuenta que no se sabe si lo que Drake hizo también es tan grave, ¿sabes? Porque Drake también tiene un tema de abuso a menores. Entonces, pues, mira, yo no sé. Es que como te digo, es que Drake también tiene sus cositas. Entonces, no sé.
And I walked into that producers, director, I mean, just a slew of famous people.
Did you have an opportunity to tell them anything in front of them?
Well, what I did is I had a moment to stand up and talk, and I said, I'm not going to address Brian because there's no reason I need to. But how dare you guys? Like, this is re-traumatizing. I go,
traumatizing.
You've heard the judge. You've heard what he admitted to. You know what's happening. I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. I can't sleep at night. I'm losing my hair. I'm afraid to be alone. I have to live with this for the rest of my life. But you guys are going to have to live with the fact that you're on that side of the courtroom. And
nada que ver, pero
shame on you. And that's all I have to say. And I never heard from any of them, some of them I worked with later on other projects.
Has anybody told you sorry about it?
Nope. Wow. The letters have been released. One person who wrote the letters made a public apology. Everyone else, no apologies. Some people have tried to get ahead of the story and say, oh, we were manipulated. We didn't understand what was going on at the time. He told us something different. But it's very interesting that they didn't say that until they knew that the letters were about to be released.
How do you deal with your mental health in that moment or in the course of that?
Mental health.
Cas, ¿cómo estás con tu mental health?
Destruction. Just any way that I could escape, any way that I could, you know, my relationship with my girlfriend just fizzled away because I felt gross.
Mental health.
And I felt shame and I felt angry and I was mad at the world.
Hace poco vi que alguien que dijo que cuando habla Drake es una buena forma de practicar el físico porque en inglés es muy limpia y clara sin un acento fuerte. Así es.
I could drink or put
¿Por qué
something
muy
in my
mal?
body that at least would make me, you know,
Yo tengo que
but
empezar a
that
practicar el
was-
listening.
it just-
Mucho.
that's even worse
Mucho.
because then you're at home by yourself and
Wow.
you can't properly work through these things. And so I ended up just,
Going down
you
and
know,
down and down.
I was able to maintain sort of a professional, you know, I ended up working on Drake and Josh and was able to maintain, you know, being professional and showing up on time and knowing my lines, but
¿Por qué
that was
están
because
mal, Cas? ¿Por
I
qué?
needed a job and that was the only thing that I loved doing.
When you watch the last seasons of Drake and Josh, you saw you
No,
different.
Cas, no te sientas rara.
I mean, I know where depending on
Siéntate bien. Ah.
the scenes and where I'm at in
Wow.
my life, I know exactly what's going on.
What happened after all these drugs issues? What happened in that moment? Or in that?
There was a long period of time that I struggled with all of this. Made a lot of poor choices. Made some
¿Verdad que sí, bien gracioso, Cas?
mistakes, and
Which
unfortunately,
kind of mistakes?
DUIs. I had an issue
Issue.
not too long ago, about 2 years ago, where I had been talking with somebody on Instagram that later turned out to be underage. I didn't know
Ey,
that
ey, tú,
what I was
grosera.
getting myself into, and there were charges brought against me because this person had claimed that I had done all of these horrible things
Horrible!
physically,
Horrible!
and was sending inappropriate pictures and all of these types of things, and so I was in
¿Ya habrá
prison
llegado
for
mi familia?
18 months. They took my phone and my computers and
Interesante.
subpoenaed all of my social media and everything, and to which they found that none of that had occurred. But because I had been talking in a way that I shouldn't have been, before the age had come to light, they were able to bring charges against me. And then they made a statement in court and said that I'd done all of these things, and the media picked that up and ran articles saying that this is what I pled guilty to and this is what I did, and the entire world thought that I was some monster, which was really hard for me because I was being called by the entire internet and media what Brian is, you know? And so I was going, wait a minute, no, this isn't me. This is this is my abuser. And
in that moment, the world doesn't know about Brian.
No.
Ahí habla ya de lo del
No,
caso
I had no
de...
idea. And so I was just, the media reported, I mean, the New York Times reported that I was a registered sex offender and that I had pled guilty to sexual assault but none of which was true. I pled guilty to these messages, these conversations, and nothing physical, and it was even brought up in the trial, and that
Ahí está, es lo que buscaba.
this is not what this case is about. It's not a sexual assault case. He's not pleading guilty to anything physical or anything. It's so dirty to say, but anything sexual, and but the media only took the first half of my trial and put that all over the news because that was more salacious and was going to get more attention. And I had media outlets like the New York Times saying, which they just yesterday printed a retraction to that article, but
it's very important.
But who reads the retractions?
Well,
you know, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's important for me and it's important for the world to see that, because if the New York Times reports it, well, it's got to be a fact. They do their research and it's got to be a fact.
Fact.
And so that was
Factos.
another traumatic experience where
sorry, at the end you were completely innocent. No, the court said about that or not?
About what I was accused of, yes. But because I had engaged in certain conversations, that was what they were able to charge me with. So I ended up getting charged and doing a year of 200 hours of community service and 2 years of probation. But what the internet was reporting and what the media was reporting was a far cry from the reality of my situation. And so it was just unbelievable. And unlike the case with Brian, that got no media coverage whatsoever, this was everywhere. And everyone was, he's a monster.
Everywhere, all.
Word I don't even want to say. He's a predator.
Me tomé una pastilla.
I mean, up until even now, was majorly canceled. And luckily, I had, in 2008, I came out and I played a concert out here at Auditorio Nacional. And the reception for my music was so incredible, like nowhere else I'd ever played in the world. And so I was like, what's going on in Mexico and Latin America with my music? They're embracing it so much. Like, I want to go play. I want to be there. I want to be where my fans love my music, not just the show, not just my acting, but music is my passion. And so I want to be there. And so I started to really cultivate that relationship and coming down here more and playing here more. And luckily, even though it was a huge story here and I did get canceled and all of that, the media did much more research on my case. They looked into it more and were able to come to the conclusion and see the reality of what had happened. And so out here,
o sea, estás triste
I
por
was able to kind of get my life back and get things going again, because the media didn't treat me, or not me, but well, yes, me, but treat my situation like the media in the States, in the US. And I was able to get the truth of what had happened out here.
What had happened?
A lot easier than what had happened in the States. So I started spending
Ya de hoy
much more
son
time out here. I was able to
53, no
play,
creo.
make music again, and I was able to do this. And then the media in the US used that against me and said, oh, Drake Bell escaped to Mexico because he's escaping the media or he's escaping his problems and his legal issues in the US, and he went down to Mexico to escape. And then some very the media would say things about Mexico like oh, he's going to be safe down there because Mexico accepts people like that. I mean, saying things about Mexico and about Latin America that were just, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, no, if you come here and if my situation was how the media was portraying it in the US, I would not be accepted in Mexico. They would be like, no, sorry, like, no, like, this is not okay.
Yes, it's the same.
It's the same. But the way the media was portraying it was I was finding a safe haven out here because I was being, just horrible things.
Siente todo el poder de las armas en el Listed, el juego gratuito de
Ya ves, Cas, siente todo el poder de no sé qué chingados en este juego todo feo y cutre.
And that it was just it just was
Yo siendo
piling on and
auspiciado por
piling on
el
and
juego
piling on.
después.
And I finally had a breaking point, and I started to spiral, and my mental state was just completely unhealthy. And I
Completely.
had 7 years of sobriety. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything for 7 years. Well, 6.5. 6.5 years. I like to round up to 7. But
did you enter a group?
Not those 7 years, which I think was was just why it was so easy for me to fall back. And I went 7 years, and but when this started happening, I knew I always had that bottle or that thing that could get me out of my mind, and I started to spiral again. And
Si soy quien,
it
yo
all
no soy
came to a
nadie
head
mentirosa.
and this was big media coverage too, was I went missing when I was in Florida, and I just had lost
your mind.
I want to put it a different way, but in a sense, yeah. And I just wanted to disappear. And so I started telling my family these horrible things. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to. What am I doing? How am I going to continue? How am I going to move forward?
And did you really think about suicide in that moment?
I mean, I'm sure there were moments that it crossed my mind, but I really wanted to just disappear. I didn't know what that meant. I just didn't want to be around anymore.
So
I had gotten in my
Lucas.
I
Be around anymore.
Out in Florida, and I got in my car, and I just drove and went to bars and tried to drown my sorrows, and ended up not responding to my family at one point.
Be around anymore.
I had my phone, and then I left my phone in the car, and I started to not respond, and then
Be around anymore.
Hours went by, and my family,
Be
especially
around
my brother,
anymore.
was going, wait a second, like after everything he just said, the way he sounded on the phone, and now he's not responding, and I have to do something. And so they called the police and reported me missing, and I ended up getting to a hotel somehow and checking in, and the next day the police found me because it was all over the news, and so I'm sure someone from the hotel was like, oh, well, he just checked in here last night. And I was picked up and taken to a facility, like a mandatory 3-day hold facility. And after that, I got back home, and my family was just so worried about me and concerned. And my brother had found a rehab facility for me. And I think it was alcohol and other things that I needed to go to rehab for, but really it was my state of mind. I didn't know how to handle everything that was going on, because with trauma also, when something traumatic happens
Pues
and you have
ecolalia.
trauma in your past, all of your trauma comes back at once.
Yes.
And now you're dealing with everything. You're not just dealing with what's happening at that moment. You're dealing with everything.
Yes, it's a large train going direct to you.
Yep.
In that moment, and you keep thinking all the stuff.
Exactly. Thinking of everything, and you have to deal with it all at that time. And so I ended up getting... my brother found this facility for me, and I ended up going to Nashville, Tennessee, and checking into rehab, and I was at the lowest.
No, quién sabe qué estás diciendo, Lucas. Estás bien loquilla.
I'd been since the Amanda Show days, and
Ya sé qué es.
and I just was completely lost, but
Pero yo nada más repetí como 2 veces. Be around anymore.
Clear my system, and my mind wasn't clouded and blocked and foggy, and I was able to start dealing with all of these issues and emotions and traumatic events and experiences
Traumatic.
In a healthier way, around people who knew what they were doing when it came to things like this. And I was there for quite some time, and was able to come out and have more tools to be able to face this head on and realize, you know, these things don't have to define you. You're not alone. It's okay to talk about. There are people you can discuss these things with that won't judge you.
Disgust.
That will that are
Disgust.
they just want to see you get better and to move forward, and able to give me the tools to where now where I'm at in my life is, you know, I look back and a lot of people ask me if there's
look back,
you know, things I regret in my past and things that I would change. And of course, the obvious answer that you would think would be, well, yeah, all the mistakes and everything.
¡Cállate, me
I
aburrí!
would change all of that. But you look back at it now, and I see that
¿Qué
there's so
hago?
much to learn from all of that. And now,
Terminamos de ver la
you know,
entrevista y
discussing
¿sabes qué
these
vamos a
things
hacer? Vamos a
before
jugar Roblox.
is moving forward now and knowing and having a much broader knowledge of how to navigate through this life.
Atrás.
Because everyone handles trauma differently, so it doesn't matter whether
Ok, pausa. Se me olvidó hacer algo que ya tengo aquí desde hace rato, pero no le he puesto nada. Listo. Ups. Listo.
you know, I mean, I was in a really bad car accident when I was 19.
Actually, you almost died.
I almost
No.
died. I broke my jaw.
Hay que aprovechar el tiempo, Cas.
Teeth are fake. I fractured my neck. My jaw was wired shut for 6 months.
Wow.
And
¿Son cuánto
whether it's an
dije?
event like
¿50 y
that,
qué? 54 minutos, creo.
something like I went through
Ahora nos quedan como 7 minutos.
prior to that,
Ya vuelvo, Cas.
or things that occurred
Desapareció,
because of the
quedé.
trauma I was dealing with, and realizing too that, you know, taking responsibility for, I'm gonna start crying again. Taking responsibility for the things that you have done, because I mean, nobody forced this into my system. Nobody forced me to treat people the way that I did. Nobody forced me to react the way that I did. You know, there was still responsibility and decisions that I made. But understanding that that's not you, that doesn't have to be you moving forward, and it doesn't have to define you or destroy you.
Siempre me ha gustado la ciencia ficción y la idea de estar justo al borde del descubrimiento y las fronteras del espacio. Dedicarme a la exploración en Eve me permite hacer todo eso. Puedes usar dispositivos de camuflaje, sondas para escanear lugares desconocidos del espacio. Puedes ir a zonas del espacio peligrosas y desconocidas y descubrir reliquias antiguas y valiosas de civilizaciones desaparecidas. Puedes entrar en agujeros de gusano que llevan a zonas desconocidas del espacio. Podrías ver un pulsar o un magnetar emitiendo ondas, un violento agujero negro con un enorme y brillante horizonte rojo alrededor. Y te recuerda dónde estás en el espacio y lo lejos que te encuentras del entorno reconocible de tu sistema de origen. Es una sensación increíble. Sientes que vives en el límite del espacio, justo en la frontera. Y siempre existe la amenaza de que otro jugador te descubra mientras caza exploradores. Y aunque te descubran, aunque te vean, la sensación de logro y de librarte por poco de un final funesto es increíble. Esa amenaza lo convierte en un reto. Mucho de lo que he hecho en Eve es seguir el contenido que se me presenta a raíz de las decisiones que he tomado. Todo forma parte de la exploración. Es no saber a qué tipo de profesión me va a llevar o qué tipo de actividad me inspirará a seguir. Es perfecto para probar lo que Eve puede ofrecer.
Yes, of course. And for example, if you feel in a low point right now, today, tomorrow, who you need to call, who you can call.
Well, that's a big part of it is keeping people around you that build you up when you're doing well and you're you're in a great state of mind or a healthy state of mind. Keeping people around you that'll build you up in those moments, but also keeping people around you that you trust and that feel comfortable enough with you to be honest and say, bro, like, you're going down that path again. Like, hang on, back up, think about this, take a breath, let's get through this. Like, I love you but I'm not just gonna sit here and praise you and say everything you're doing is great, because right now you need to step back and realize that, is something going on inside? Is there something happening that's making you sort of veer this way? Let's get you back on track, So it's really important to have a solid support system. And I think that with my brother and, my brothers and my sister and my dad and my mom, and I have very close friends out here, especially in Mexico. I have a great group of, I always keep because back in those days, there were a lot of people just hanging on and wanting a piece of this and wanting a piece of that and because you got to get to go to the cool parties and you got to be around the famous people and you got to go, and oh, Drake's taking us out to the best dinners and we're getting to go on vacations and we're getting to do cool stuff. And you realize that those people are temporary.
Yes.
And having people around you that know you completely and know your darkness, know your light, and see you for who you really are and love you for that, is really, really important to keep those people very, very close to you. Okay. And that don't have a fear of talking about things or bringing something up to you when it needs to be said.
Do you have a therapist or a professional near? Because about drugs issues, it's very difficult to be alone.
Yeah, I have a therapist back in Los Angeles, and I have one here, and it's very hard to be alone. But we were discussing that earlier off camera, and I think that's something that people need to hear is, when I was younger, it was very, very hard for me, especially after what had happened to me, for me to be alone by myself with my own thoughts and to feel comfortable and safe just being alone. I always had to have people around. And with that, you start attracting or keeping people around you that shouldn't be around you just because you need to be around people. And
because you can't be alone.
Yeah, because you can't be alone. But I think what we were saying earlier is it's very, very important to work on being able to be alone and feeling okay about that.
Be a father.